YouTube, welcome back to my channel. So Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are in hot water again, and I came across this article today regarding an organisation called the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, which is an advocacy group, and what they have actually recently uncovered is that Meghan and Harry ran up a security bill which they still haven't paid back to Canada, and it was covered by the Canadian taxpayers of £30,000. Now, this is just part of the costs that they ran up while they were staying in Canada, and they was actually living in Canada from November last year, and they stayed there under the guise of them not wanting to be senior royal members of the royal family and wanting to have a private life. But during that time, they had gone to the Canadian government and they had essentially been getting Justin Trudeau, the current Prime Minister of Canada, to support them in their security bill costs under the guise of being senior members of the royal family. And as soon as they announced that they'd be stepping back, that was then stripped away. But the Canadian taxpayer was not informed that they had actually been footing the bill for Meghan and Harry. So this has landed them in hot water again. And I found this article on the Daily Mail. I do really like the Daily Mail publication. It says here, Prince Harry and Meghan made Canadian taxpayers foot a £30,000 security bill after fleeing the £11 million mansion during Brexit. It carries on to say they left Canadian taxpayers covering their hefty £30,000 security bill after fleeing an £11 million mansion during the Brexit. And we know that they left that mansion and they bounced on Tyler Perry's private plane to LA, where they are currently residing in his mansion in LA. Carries on to say, advocacy group Canadian Taxpayers Federation made the startling revelation following an information request to authorities. So I'm going to go over the article, but to summarize it quickly before I get into the nitty-gritty of it all, it seems as though there was some resistance to releasing how much money Meghan and Harry had actually spent of the Canadian taxpayers' money, because I think the authorities knew that it would be controversial and they knew that people would be upset. So they were kind of doing this sneakily behind the Canadians' backs, and I think that's absolutely disgusting, considering as a taxpayer, whether you're a Canadian taxpayer or a British taxpayer or an American taxpayer, you have a right to know where your money is going. No one likes paying taxes, but the least that they could do, considering legally we are required to pay taxes to contribute to our society so that we can all live harmoniously and we have money for social programs, is let us know where our money's going. They failed to do this, so I'm going to carry on. Neighbours also claimed that the Vancouver holiday home is owned by a Russian billionaire. So it seems that the mansion that Meghan and Harry were staying in on Vancouver Island was owned by a Russian billionaire, but we know that Meghan and Harry do like to align themselves with extremely wealthy people because they're looking to set up this Archwell Foundation, which has allegedly been delayed till 2021 now. So that doesn't really surprise me. Then it carries on to say, documents obtained by the Federation through an access to information request show that the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, which is abbreviation RCMP, spent more than 50,000 Canadian dollars, I believe that is, on overtime and logistics costs to provide security for Meghan and Harry after they briefly moved to Canada. Aaron Woodrick, the campaign group's federal director, added, for months, the Trudeau government refused to even acknowledge Canadian taxpayers were on the hook for Harry and Meghan's security costs. So Aaron is the director of this Canadian advocacy group, and all I can say, a round of applause to him for persisting with this investigation as to what exactly was funded by the Canadian taxpayer. But it seems that he's been met with a lot of resistance, which is rather unfair. But then we know that Meghan she's no longer now friends with, well, it's not that she's not friends with Sophie Trudeau and Justin Trudeau anymore, but she did have a friendship, I believe, with them at some point. And Ben Mulroney shared a childhood with Justin Trudeau, who is the husband to Jessica Mulroney, who has fallen from grace recently. So that was her Canadian circle. She spent quite a few years living in Toronto where she filmed Suits. I think it was 7 years. And I think that's where the resistance comes from. It's almost as though they was trying to protect her and Harry's interests by not being upcoming with the truth. Now, £30,000, which is about 50,000 Canadian dollars, doesn't seem like a large amount of money. It would be to people like me and you, but it doesn't seem like a large amount of money. But the fact of the matter is that this is just the cost that was spent on the minor expenses of the security teams, overtime and travel expenses. The RCMP have only released part of the costs. So I'm going to carry on and say here, Aaron Woodrick said, "Now we know the answer is yes, to the tune of at least 50,000 Canadian dollars. The Mounties documents show bills totaled 56,000 Canadian dollars as of January 2020. Then he carries on to say those totals do not include salaries or costs incurred after that date. This is quite damning, actually, and we knew that this would be a high bill. I think that we're probably looking at something like 200 to 300,000 pounds. That's just my personal estimation. Don't quote me on that, but that's personally what I think. And then it carries on to say the RCMP clearly expressed concern over the media scrutiny of those costs. Their press release added, the group included a quote reported to have been found in an email exchange between Bernardine Chapman, commanding officer of the RCMP's National Division, and police colleagues. So this is an email seems to have been leaked by the commanding officer of the RCMP group. She was said to have written, "Media is on this like a hot potato, so lots of coverage of the potential of the royals to spend half their time in Canada now as a couple. We are having a greater conversation next week on the go forward on this. This has a huge potential to cost us huge." The taxpayers group said that many Canadians were happy to welcome the Duke and Duchess of Sussex to make their home in Canada. And we know that they had this petition regarding them not wanting to foot the bill for Meghan and Harry's lifestyle. So it carries on to say, but 80,000 people signed the Canadian Taxpayer Federation petition telling the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, to not use taxpayer money to cover bills for the rich and famous couple. The costs were piling up even as Trudeau refused to say whether or not Canadians were paying to protect the royal couple. The Canadians were more than happy to have Meghan and Harry in their country, as long as they weren't footing the bill for it. To all of our dismay, they was footing the bill for it. I believe that the British taxpayer personally is still footing the bill for Meghan and Harry's lavish lifestyle. Expenses have been reduced because, let's face it, we're in the middle of a pandemic, so Meghan and Harry haven't been travelling around and doing as many engagements as they once were. But we know we are still paying in some kind of way for their life. So it carries on to say the costs were piling up even as Trudeau refused to say whether or not Canadians were paying to protect the royal couple. And now, surprise, surprise, we know that they was paying for them all the way up until the day that I think they left town and bounced. Harrison say the documents show that RCMP spent at least 56,000 Canadian dollars from November the 18th, 2019 to January 19th, 2020. It added, I think they was paying for them from November all the way up until March 31st when Meghan and Harry officially stepped down as senior members of the royal family. I think it's absolutely disgusting that they're not allowing people to see the full extent of this. Harrison say, Rudrick said more than $50,000 is nothing to sneeze at, especially when you consider the fact that this is taxpayers' money covering the bills for one of the most famous and wealthy couples in the world, which is true. Had the government not cut them off and had Meghan and Harry stayed in Canada, the bill could have easily turned into millions. And I think this is one of the pushing reasons as to why Meghan and Harry ran away to LA, because they didn't want to have to pay this money back. So they tried to leave quickly, avoid more costs, because they realized they wasn't going to have a scot-free life in Canada. People just weren't going to take it lying down. The current Canadian security bill does not include the salaries paid to the Mounties on duty and only shows costs such as overtime, travel, meals, incidentals and accommodations, the group reported. So this is a very skewed bill. It's not really a full picture of how much money Meghan and Harry actually cost the Canadians, and I feel sorry for you guys that you was in that position. I definitely think that there should be some kind of retribution. I think Meghan and Harry should pay this just for, I mean, they look bad enough already by what they've done to the British taxpayer, how they've treated us. They've given us a bad image, and we know with everything that's going on, it just hasn't helped. So I think that they should pay back. Carries on to say, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation advocated against spending any taxpayer money on the couple's expenses. Quoting, we're proud to have given a voice to the majority of Canadians who felt subsidising the Sussexes' lifestyle choices was an outrageous use of tax dollars, said Rudrick. So that's where I'm going to leave it, guys. I think that it is wrong. I really hope that they actually their conscience kicks in and they decide that they're going to pay this money back. And I hope that Justin Trudeau actually has his conscience kicks in also, and he actually orders Meghan and Harry to give this money back to the Canadian taxpayers. Meghan and Harry have done absolutely nothing for Canada, and it's not fair that you guys would have been paying in any way, shape or form for that period. Anyway, that's the end of this video, and I'll be back with another one. Bye guys.